In today's lesson, we're going to dive deep into one of the most expressive and essential techniques in guitar playing, and that's string bending. String bending adds soul, emotion, and that signature sound to your guitar playing. Pretty much all of your favourite electric guitar players and some of your favourite acoustic guitar players will utilise string bending in their playing. Today, I'm going to break down string bending in simple steps, making it easy for beginners to grasp. But before I do that, let's first understand the basics of string bending. String bending involves pushing or pulling the string across the guitar fretboard while maintaining pitch. One of the most crucial aspects of this technique is using your wrist and your finger strength to maintain control. Here's an example of an accurate string bend. So we're going to start with the very basics. We'll start with semitone or half step bends to begin with. We'll then progress on to full whole tone or whole step bends. We're going to use a variety of finger combinations. And towards the end of this lesson, we're also going to have a look at how to add vibrato to your string bends in order to really make your playing speak. So the first string bend I'm going to teach you today is the one finger half step bend. We're going to perform this on the 5th fret of the B string, and we're just going to use the index finger to bend that string. In order to do that, we first need to have a look at the optimum thumb placement on the guitar neck and also the optimum finger placement. The last video that I posted on this channel was all about proper thumb placement on the neck, so if you haven't checked out that video, please go and do so. It will be linked in the video description and also pinned in the comments. If you're unfamiliar with hand positioning and thumb positioning, that video will really help and will be a very good precursor to today's lesson. Let's first start off with the thumb placement. As you can see, I've got my thumb wrapped over the top of the guitar neck like this. I'm also holding the guitar neck with this grip. It's a pincer pinch type grip like this between my thumb and my first finger. I find that this gives me the optimum amount of control over string bends, and I always use this position. I feel that one major mistake that beginners make when they are trying to learn how to bend strings is that they try and do it with their thumb placed behind the guitar neck, in this position, as if you were about to perform a bar chord. I still think that you can perform a string bend with your thumb in that position. However, I don't think you will be able to get the full control and the full dynamic expression that you will need to. So maintain a really good strong grip on the neck, thumb and first finger in this position. And with regard to the finger placement, I try and position my first finger as close to the end of the fret as I possibly can. I'm not pressing directly down onto the fret like that. I'm slightly before it. I'm also not concerned with touching the high E string with my index finger. I also find that people try and do it like this as if they're going to play an open chord, which again is going to give you less control than if your finger is in this position. Finally, make sure that you're pressing down on the string with the tip of your finger. Now, I said earlier that we're going to perform a semitone or a half step bend on the guitar to begin with. A semitone or a half step basically is just one fret. So we're going to push that note until it sounds like the fret that's one above it. So if I'm going to bend fret 5 on the B string, I'm going to bend it until it sounds like fret 6. So before you start to do that bend and before you start to attempt that bend, I would sound fret 6 on the guitar first to hear what that sounds like, and then gradually push that string until you can hear fret 5 sound like fret 6. So to break all that down, here's what fret 6 sounds like on the B string on my guitar. We're going to position our thumb and our finger in the correct position on fret 5 now. We're going to play fret 5 and then we're going to slowly push that string until we can hear it sound like fret 6. So again, reference pitch, fret 5. Don't worry if you didn't quite get the same pitch that I did at first. Practice makes perfect. This is definitely something that you will need to repeat again and again until you get the hang of it. Now, one thing that a lot of my students struggle with is hearing that pitch when they're doing the bend. When you're a beginner, it may be the case that your ear isn't quite tuned just yet to when a note sounds slightly flat or even slightly sharp. Don't worry about that, because not everyone who starts playing guitar is born with a musical ear. It's something that you can train over time and that you can get used to. So if you can't quite hear whether your bend is in tune or not, then my top tip is to use a tuner to help you do that. What I mean by that is you will go through the same process that we just did. So you will sound the target fret to begin with, you will see what that note is on the tuner, and then you will gradually push that string as we just did until it gets into the middle, like you're tuning your string on your guitar. I'm going to show you a close-up of my guitar pedal board with the tuner on there, and we're going to see how I do that. Okay, so I've got my Helix here set up with the tuner on it. Excuse the audio quality and the video quality, but I'm doing this off my phone right now. So I'm going to sound fret number 6 on my B string. So I need to push my fret 5 on my B string, which is an E, until it reaches an F. So I'm going to start doing that really slowly right now. And that amount of pressure and that amount of grip has given me a perfectly in tune half step or semitone bend on the guitar. The next thing to start to focus on after you've mastered pushing that string up to pitch is to release it back down to where it was. I know this might seem like a simple thing at first, but trust me, this is quite a challenge for beginners to get at first when they start to do string bending. So what I mean is we're going to now practice doing the bend and the release on the fretboard. We're going to push that string up to pitch, we're going to return it back to its pitch, and we're not going to choke that string or choke that bend in the meantime. Here's my fret 5 semitone or half step bend on the B string. I'm going to release that slowly without accidentally choking the note. So keep practicing that movement until you develop the control needed to be able to push that string up and then bring it back down again. Next, we're going to have a look at how to do a 2-finger bend, and this is going to be a whole step or a whole tone bend on the B string. Sometimes you will need to use 2 fingers to bend a string. This will depend on what you're playing and what kind of licks you're playing on the guitar, but sometimes it's going to be quicker and more efficient to use 2 fingers to bend a string and keep your ring finger or your pinky finger in the same position rather than having to skip over to another finger. This time we're going to take fret 6 on the B string. We're going to use 2 fingers and we're going to bend it until it sounds like fret number 8. So again, you can use the tuner method or you can train your ears, whichever one gives you the best results. This time I'm going to place my 2nd finger on fret 6 of the B string because that's the string that I want to bend. I'm then going to support that with my index finger on fret 5 on the same string. The reason I'm doing that is because this is going to provide me with more strength and more control. It is possible to be able to push and bend that fret 6 on the B string just by itself and still get the required pitch, like this. However, you probably just heard that that was slightly out of control. It still sounded okay, but it was probably a little bit wild, and I could have done that better. Well, the way to do that is to use 2 fingers to control that bend like this. So I've positioned my first finger close to fret number 6. I'm on fret 5, but I'm close to 6. And my 2nd finger, again, is close to the end of fret number 6 on the B string. My fingers are slightly curved. My thumb's over the top to give me a good grip on it. Before I push that string, I'm going to sound fret number 8 on the B string so I can hear that target pitch in my head. On your tuner, that should say G. I'm going to push that slowly until it sounds like that note. The last thing that we're going to learn how to do, and this is the most common string bend that you will learn how to execute, is the 3-finger whole step or whole tone bend. A lot of your string bends will take place on the high E string, the B string, or the G string. And the most common string bend to do is the whole step or whole tone bend. The whole step or the whole tone on guitar is 2 frets. So in the previous example on the B string, that was a whole step or a whole tone bend because we were pushing fret 6 to sound like fret number 8, and fret number 8 is 2 frets higher than fret number 6. We're going to use all 3 fingers and we're going to do this on the G string this time. We're going to take fret number 7 on the G and we're going to make it sound like fret number 9 by bending that fret 7 until it sounds like fret 9 in your head. Now, in my opinion, this is one of the hardest string bends to get under your fingers to begin with, but don't worry, with practice, you will definitely be able to do it. So again, nice pinch type grip on the guitar. It's the thumb over the top technique, not thumb behind the neck. Again, you will probably still be able to push that string and you'll probably be able to get a nice full tone bend out of it, or a full step bend out of it, but you won't have the desired control that you need to. And you definitely won't be able to add vibrato on the end as consistently as if you have your thumb over the top in this position. When I did that bend just now, I was really struggling to get it up to pitch. However, with this bend, much better, and I can even add some nice vibrato to the end of it. So let's break that down step by step. My thumb is over the top. My first finger is placed on fret 5. My second finger is placed on fret 6. Again, those fingers are quite close to the actual frets themselves. They're not directly on them, they're just before. And it's the same thing with my ring finger. Again, don't be afraid to touch the B string and the high E string with some part of your first finger here. We're not doing a bar like this, but we are just slightly touching them. This makes sure my fingers are in the correct position. I'm pushing out slightly from the knuckles here, and I'm going to use this muscle in my wrist to sort of slowly rotate my hand and my wrist like that to push that string. Before we do that, I'm going to sound fret number 9 on the G. That's my target pitch. Again, check that with either your tuner or practice using your ears to sound that note. Here we go. So again, pushing from here. And that sounds pretty close to that fret number 9 in my opinion. As you can see, when I push that string, my fingers are pretty much touching my thumb. So don't be afraid of that at all. At first, it will feel like you're pushing that string quite hard and quite far in order to grab that note. But after a while and with practice, you will get used to it. Again, don't be disheartened if you can't get the pitch consistently or even at all first. It's all about developing the muscles, the tiny muscles in your hand and in your wrist in order to be able to execute that. And also, don't be afraid of finger pain to begin with. If you get wrist or joint pain, stop, because we don't want to get any kind of RSI or tendonitis. But finger pain on the string is fine. That means that the calluses are forming, and don't be afraid of that. Obviously, if it hurts too much, just stop. But skin and finger pain is fine. Muscle and joint pain, not good. So last technique we're going to look at is to add vibrato onto the end of that string bend. We're going to take that same 3-finger whole step bend that we just did on fret number 7 of the G, and we're going to add some vibrato to the end of it. Now, vibrato is almost like a micro bend backwards and forwards on your guitar, and it sounds like this. I'm shaking that note after I've played it, and I'm oscillating the pitch ever so slightly. So if I can do that on the end of a string bend, that's going to sound really expressive and it's going to sound really nice. All of your favorite players will do this with their string bending at some point. It really gives the guitar a vocal quality and really helps the instrument speak. Now, the problem that you will have at first when you add vibrato to the end of your 3-finger bends is that it can be difficult to control. You're just starting to develop the muscles in your fingers and your wrist in order to give you that power in order to push that string. So keeping it held up and adding a tiny shake to the string will prove to be difficult at first, but again, with practice, you will be able to get it down. So I'm going to push that string to pitch, and I'm going to start to shake it like this. Again, I'm oscillating slightly with my wrist and my hand and my fingers like that. One thing that may happen at first is that because you haven't developed those muscles and you don't have the control over it to begin with, is that you may just be starting to shake the whole guitar neck like this, and not much will be happening. Again, just keep persisting with it, because eventually you'll be able to keep the guitar neck still and just shake the string. You can see actually just then my elbow popped out a little bit to give me a tiny little bit more control and a little bit more power over the string. I think that's fine. I don't see anything wrong with that. I would rather that happens than you have your hand or your wrist in the wrong position and that you cause yourself harm in the long term. Now, one other common mistake that beginners tend to make with this technique is that they will push that string and they will accidentally release some of the pitch as they're trying to add vibrato to the end of the bend. And that would sound like this. So in that example, you could hear that the bend was let go of slightly and the pitch started to drop before the vibrato was added to the end. Unfortunately, that doesn't sound as strong or as powerful as when you're able to keep the bend held up to pitch and you're able to add vibrato on the top of it. So to combat that, what you have to do is imagine that you're pushing the note up to the pitch line and the vibrato is pushing it ever so slightly further, not too far, but ever so slightly further than the required pitch. So to break that down, I'm going to push that string, I'm going to bend that string now, and then for my vibrato, I'm going to push it slightly harder, but not too harder. If I push it slightly harder, I'm going to get a whole new pitch, which I don't want. Like that. If I keep it under control and I use tiny movements, it's going to sound really good. Now, when I did that, there may have been some slight neck shaking and some slight head shaking on the guitar. That's okay, because I'm still getting the sound of the vibrato out. What you don't want is you're shaking the entire neck and the entire body violently and no vibrato or pitch changes happening at all. And one more thing to point out with string bending is the direction in which you're going to pull or push each individual string on the guitar when you bend it. As a general rule, you're going to push the E, the B, and the G strings. Towards your head or towards your face, and you're going to pull the low E string, the A string, and the D string towards the floor. With the high E string and the B string, that's just a simple case of physics. If you try and push the high E string or the B string a full tone, you're probably going to run out of neck and you're going to accidentally bend the string off of the fretboard, which you don't want. And it's the same case with the low E string and the A string. If you try and push those towards your face, you may push them off the fretboard. The D and the G string, it's a little bit more lenient. You can either push or pull them in either direction. It's more common for the G string to be pushed towards your face and the D string towards the floor, but feel free to experiment with whatever works best for you. There are no hard and fast rules with those two. So those are all the tips I have for string bending so far. I would encourage you to experiment with different pitches, so whole tones, minor thirds, two tones or two-step bends if you can, semitones or half steps, and also experiment with different speeds of the bend, so gradual and slow like this, or quick and fast up to pitch like this. You can also experiment with pre-bending. And you can also experiment with combining bends with hammer-ons, pull-offs, and slides. The options are truly endless. Make sure you practice this technique every day, because that will be the only way that you develop the strength and the control in your fingers, your hand, and your wrists in order to be able to perform these bends accurately and develop your pitching. The pitching is the most important thing. I don't think there's anything worse than hearing an out of tune string bend either pushed too sharp or too flat. So that about wraps up today's lesson on string bending. I hope that you found this lesson useful. Please hit that like button, ring that notification bell to never miss one of my guitar lessons on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel, it really helps. And until next time, thanks very much. I'm Paul Burke. Take care and enjoy guitar playing. Thank you.